of you to next level. I'm Rebecca Lee, Managing Director of New Energy Nexus California. We are a nonprofit organization that provides accelerators, funds, and networks to entrepreneurs who are leading the way to 100% clean energy for the 100%. We started in California 2 decades ago as the California Clean Energy Fund, and since that time, we've grown our impact. We've also outgrown our name. We're now New Energy Nexus, but at the same time that we have been growing our innovation and entrepreneur support ecosystem across the globe, in China, in India, Southeast Asia, East and West Africa, and Australia, with 1,200 startups, close to 10,000 entrepreneurs supported, almost 8,000 green jobs created, and 3.7 billion mobilized in investments. Our mission really is to support diverse entrepreneurs to drive innovation and equity into the global clean energy economy. Our new CEO, Henri van Eegen, Henri, if you can wave, is here with us from the Netherlands. And we could not be prouder to introduce him to you, our entrepreneurs and our ecosystem partners. So welcome all of you, and welcome Director Steinbuck from the California Energy Commission to get us started with our first panel. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jonah Steinbuck, Director for the Research and Development Division at the California Energy Commission, and I'm honored to moderate this panel coming up here, and great to be with everyone this morning. Thanks to New Energy Nexus for bringing us all together and for the partnership on CalSeed and CalTestBed. The Energy Commission is in this energy innovation and entrepreneurship space is really focused on helping speed and ensure the success of technologies and firms and entrepreneurs through the technology innovation pipeline, from lab research to pilot demonstrations, commercialization and deployment. And the Electric Program Investment Charge, the EPIC program, has been foundational for this support, $150 million per year in partnership with investor-owned utilities and with the Public Utilities Commission. And CalSeed and CalTestBed are core components to the EPIC program, providing essential support, particularly at the earlier stages. So many of you have participated and know these programs well. But CalSeed, obviously providing critical support for concept development, prototype development, and New Energy Nexus provides a range of business and technology support services to help entrepreneurs. And CalTestBed providing important access to state-of-the-art testing facilities throughout the state, so at the UCs, at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And these programs have shown to be very impactful, as demonstrated by all of you here today. But one of the key metrics that we track at the Energy Commission is follow-on private investment. Rebecca mentioned this as well. And CalSeed and CalTestBed have really proven to be highly effective models. So $34 million invested in CalSeed, translating to $1.5 billion, according to our latest tally, of private follow-on investment. So 40-fold amplification of that initial public investment. And CalTestBed, $17 million invested, and $1.2 billion catalyzed in private investment, a 70-fold amplification. So really impressive results across the portfolio, and then just exciting, innovative firms. 12 is on the agenda here later in the day, part of the CalSeed network, taking waste CO2, converting it into useful products and fuels, and Tora, developing thermal batteries that can supply high temperature heat in the industrial sector. South 8 Technologies, developing novel electrolytes that can make batteries safer, avoid thermal runaway situations. And then on the Cal testbed side of things, Liminal Insights here in the Bay Area, leveraging ultrasound technologies and advanced analytics to detect manufacturing defects in batteries and pinpoint where those problems are occurring and rectify them. Another one is NEX Energy Technologies, so using PV coatings on glass, so delivering on-site renewable energy at buildings and facilities, but also allowing visible light to transmit through and provide natural light for residents and occupants. So lots of exciting developments, and excited to dive into the specific technologies that are represented here on the panel. First, just want to pass it to Theresa Maldonado for some opening remarks as well.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here in person finally. Some of you know I moved to California from Texas literally half a week before COVID shut down, so I'm getting to meet my colleagues at New Energy Nexus for the first time in person today, so I'm so excited. What is the role of the University of California in this effort? I was thrilled to learn about Cal Testbed when I arrived to California. It is a very powerful model of partnerships and to leverage the assets that we have in the university system. So through my office at UC System, Office of the President, I work with all 10 UC campuses, as well as the 3 DOE national laboratories that UC manages or co-manages, Agriculture and Natural Resources and UC Health. You can imagine the rich assets that we have across our campuses to support the work that you need to do to advance your technologies. Since the symposium in June of last year, I believe, my office has been working with the governor's office and 400 partners across the state of California to attract a Department of Energy hydrogen hub, and we succeeded. So that's part of the clean energy landscape. Now, the reason this is important is because it's not just the demonstration projects that we have to partner and fulfill for DOE in the state of California in the hydrogen space. It's another energy transition. But we had to engage not only industry, but labor, communities, environmental justice groups. And so we work together to navigate these communities, which are, this navigation is required to advance what you need to do in your space. And so it's not just developing your technology, it's doing it in the context of society. So we have attracted this hydrogen hub, $1.2 billion, with an additional $11 billion in cost share through our 400 partners. So we have demonstrated that we can do this work. Now, I am an engineer, and I think you are too. The importance of test beds. I've worked in engineered systems for many years. As you know, test beds are important. You have to demonstrate your technologies, if it's a process, a widget, whatever. But it has to work in a system. And so test beds are very important, as you know, to scale your technologies and de-risk your work. And so the university stands ready to work with the entrepreneurs to realize those navigations to the Valley of Death. What my office did over the last 3 years is look at the pre-Valley of Death, and we looked in the mirror and worked with the Board of Regents of the University of California to see how we can support our UC entrepreneurs, faculty, and other researchers in developing their intellectual property. So we did a revamp of our policies, our workflows, and our IT platforms to help our UC community advance their own work from the research that they do in the labs. So now we're in a position to help them navigate that Valley of Death. So in partnership with the California Energy Commission, New Energy Nexus, we can work together to see how we can advance our clean energy technologies in a more accelerated fashion in a de-risk approach. So I stand ready to continue this partnership. I'm also excited to explore Cal Testbed as a model in other sectors. I am, including this morning, in touch with the CHIPS office in Washington, D.C. to explore how to adapt the Cal Testbed model for semiconductor entrepreneurs. And so I congratulate the fact that the state of California has pulled this model together. I'm eager to learn what all the warts are, what we need to figure out, the problem areas in implementing Cal Testbed, because I think it's an important model for hydrogen, for semiconductors, and other sectors of the future. So thank you very much. Now let's focus on our entrepreneurs.
All right, looking forward to digging in with our innovators here, representing a diverse set of technology areas, microgrids for EV charging, building automation, manufacturing of zero-emission, low-emission vehicles in the transit space. So just want to give you all the opportunity to just kind of introduce yourselves, speak about your company. If you could just kind of give a snapshot of your company's journey and what success has looked like, and also interested in how governmental support through CalC, Cal Testbed, other programs that you've leveraged have had an impact in your company's journey. So maybe Fola, let's start with you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ayoola. I'm Chief Scientific Officer of ElectricFish and co-founder. So what ElectricFish does is try to address the transition issue by putting storage everywhere in a resilient way. There's a lot of conversation right now, as it was just talked about. Hydrogen is one potential solution. We're trying to decarbonize across the board, particularly heavy duty, trucking, drayage. Demand is going to keep increasing. We're a consuming society. But then there's not much on the infrastructure side. We have a lot of technology out there, but then putting projects to deployment and getting them live is still a strong bottleneck. And so where we coming in is we identified that problem and then figured, well, why don't we put storage out there and use the EV charging market as a beachhead to get resilience on our energy system. So we came up with the idea to combine that in a box and then connect it with bidirectional storage such that we can draw down the total cost of ownership to the customer by combining all these different value streams. And what that really does is help break what I call the chicken and egg problem and get that charging infrastructure out to the communities that need it the most, that are most disproportionately impacted by climate damages. So when we started off, in 2019, incorporated almost exactly 4 years ago. I have 3 co-founders. I'm Nigerian. One of my co-founders is from Brazil, another from India, and then one American. So really we brought a diverse perspective of sort of this global issue to the table, and very, of course, quickly realized the US is an interesting microcosm of these global problems. So what we figured is, well, why don't we build a solution that we can take back across the board to the countries we're from that are applicable here and also elsewhere. And so then the Cal Seed program and New Energy Nexus have been a tremendous part of that journey. We got the Cal Seed in 2022, and that helped us to finance a couple of our pilots. And we've demonstrated this technology from just an idea of a few years ago to very real 3-dimensional product that we're now shipping to customers. And so it's been an exciting journey. I'll talk probably a little bit more about that over the course of today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Tanya Barham. And first of all, I have to say we're in other state and national accelerators, and I do think that this CalC and CalTestBed are some of the best in the California ecosystem for climate tech. I'm not just saying that to butter you up. I really do think so, and I say it all the time. HVAC emissions, 15% of global carbon emissions, and obviously we've looked at HVAC as an energy efficiency or mitigation strategy for carbon, but as the world warms, it's one sector of the built environment in terms of operational emissions that is set to double to quintuple over the next 20 years, given that areas that previously were very mild, like Berkeley and Oakland, yesterday it's 95 degrees. So who was it? Maybe Melody was just complaining about how everyone here is like, oh, 95, it's so hot. She's like, I'm from the Central Valley, stop complaining. But, we're seeing it everywhere. These places that were previously mild are adding air conditioning, and it's become really a human right. So we have about 133 sites on our wait list right now in the state of California, most of which are K through 12 schools. Most of which are disadvantaged communities. So in many cases, as much as 90% of the students are on free and reduced lunch, high levels of air pollution. And what you see is that for every degree over about 95 degrees of heat, while the buildings are occupied, and mind you, in the state of California, post-COVID, California has an amazing educational system. And in recognition of all the catch-up they needed to do for students, they extended the school day by an hour and the instructional month by a month, and they added pre-K and TK to schools. So you're housing students and community members well into the hot months of the year. And for every increase by a degree over 95 degrees, you have a 5% learning loss, and it disproportionately impacts communities of color and disadvantaged communities. So HVAC is also an adaptation strategy for climate change. And it's just not that sexy. So when I was talking to communities, this Community Energy Lab started, we're an HVAC control software that uses machine learning to deliver optimum comfort at about 30% less peak demand from energy and 5 to 10% less energy usage overall. And the way that we came to that was I started with the problem and not the technical solution necessarily. So I had been doing transitioning out of a utility, talking about microgrids, talking about decarbonization, and the same issue came up, that we can't afford to do a multi-million-dollar retro commissioning of our building or equipment replacement. We need something cheap, fast, keeps people comfortable, lowers energy burden. And by the way, we don't need another monitoring. We don't need to know that our buildings are screwed up. We know that. We just need somebody to do something about it with the data. So I was like, why hasn't anyone done anything? And then I've devoted the last 4 years of my life to realizing why nobody had done anything, because it's really hard. So I just wanted to say about CalSeed and CalTestBed, how they helped there. Bringing that prototype to market, we worked with University of California, Berkeley, right here, their Center for the Built Environment, to develop a measurement and verification protocol to verify that the core technology actually worked. This was important because we have an integrated product. It's not just software, it's integrated with embedded systems and the like. And our algorithms had only been tested in controlled environments. And pricing, we were working with real-time pricing in Southern California, Edison territory, and lots of different utilities. So there's so many factors. How do you isolate in a control versus a experimental condition? What portion of those changes came from our technology? And they came up with a very, very clever protocol, and we can talk about it later. It was actually very hard to bring that protocol to market, and I think that's one of the warts of the program. It takes longer than a year sometimes to work on that M&V protocol, but I will say that M&V protocol it allowed us to, after implementing our first 2 pilots in 2022, we published our results in the peer-reviewed Journal of Energy and Buildings in 2023. We then did 24 more campuses the next year, and we'll be publishing again probably this year. And I think building that level of trust would have been close to impossible without all of the effort that LBL and UC Berkeley invested.
Well, I feel a little bit like the odd person out here because we aged out of being a startup in the late 1800s. So we were a startup in 1890, and we built carriages and repaired carriages in San Francisco. As you can imagine, in the early 1900s, there was disruption with the advent of the automobile. And with that, we had to pivot as an organization. That predates me, but we pivoted as an organization, and then we had to pivot again because we got into car tops before cars came standard with tops. Cars came standard with tops, pivoted again, got into military vehicles, school buses for a large part of our history, and then in the late 70s, we transitioned into transit buses. And today we're the leading transit bus manufacturer in the United States. About 10 to 12 years ago, we went into a different journey because we saw the need and we saw the demand starting to move over to zero-emission vehicles. And we knew this was something that we wanted to and we needed to be a part of in a big way. The challenge that we had as an organization is we didn't have that expertise out of the gate. And we're a very established company. We had our processes, and we were really good at what we did. But we knew this was our future. We had to pivot strong. So we started our first pilot program with a local transit authority here in Walnut Creek, and we built just under a dozen battery electric buses, and we brought in a couple of partners to help us do that. But it was a pilot program, and we chose not to take that out until we were able to prove out that technology and that it would be suitable for Gillig to put his badge on and go out and commercialize this product. A few years after that, we moved forward with our next generation battery electric bus, and today we're on our third generation electric bus. As you can see, the technology is changing rapidly. Our development programs are changing rapidly as well, are developing rapidly as well. We made an acquisition this year. We acquired a company. They were based in Colorado, but it was a startup. That we have now a dedicated team of engineers, software engineers, as we start to look to vertically integrate within our own product so that we can ultimately control our strategic destiny. So as you can see, we are evolving and changing our organization. So I joked earlier that we are the 134-year-old startup, or at least it feels like it. But I've been with the business for 14 years, been in California for 14 years now. And as we look forward, the biggest opportunities for us is going to help transits become zero-emission fleets, and it is moving quickly in that direction. And it's not just battery electric buses; it's also fuel cell buses. So we're just kicking off our fuel cell program as we speak, and looking forward to doing that. 450 electric buses, Gillig electric buses are on the streets around the country at 75 different transit authorities. But we have a backlog of over 1,000 right now. Our biggest challenge recently has been our ability to scale. And the California Energy Commission provided us with a grant specifically to how we scale the organization. So we have the technology, but how do we scale that technology in a manufacturing environment? We built a 640,000 square foot manufacturing plant in Livermore, California in 2017. And we have 1,200 employees there, more than half of those represented by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We need to preserve those jobs. These are well-paying U.S. California jobs. How do we preserve those? Well, we have to be competitive. We have to be able to scale that up. So with this grant, we had that ability to do so, and I'm proud to report that this year we're building at capacity around 140 to 150 battery electric buses a year. Next year we're going to do 650 battery electric buses in the year, and that's going to represent roughly, we'll call it 40% of our overall production. So it's taken off, and the California Energy Commission has put us in a position to be successful.
Thank you all. Super interesting histories and different ages of companies, but still on the leading edge of innovation.
Is your mic on?
Sorry about that. Just remarking on just the interesting histories of these firms and different ages, but still taking on the leading edge of innovation, regardless of age. Derek and Tanya, you both mentioned previewed some of the challenges around scale up and just maybe working in the K-12 sector and energy efficiency. So I just want to invite all of you to share your thoughts on challenges that you're facing in your company today, or that you're kind of seeing in the field, and what you think governmental agencies or other stakeholders may be able to do to help overcome those challenges.
Of course. I think there was a poll earlier, there's a lot of hardware companies in the room. So as Tanya said earlier, hardware is hard. And so one big thing, of course, is capital, and we know everything going on with the macros, right? But then it's challenging and it's hard, but we need to keep growing and scaling. So it's important to go back to the drawing board and figure, well, how can we put together a smart, intelligent capital stack from the ecosystem, from our, be it customers, regulatory agencies that are trying to work with, we can work with them, that are trying to push our technology to the folks who need it, designing programs, or with the great folks at the CEC and NEX. So I mentioned earlier, CalSeed was a very important part of that for us in helping to finance our first couple of pilots, and that really helped us demonstrate our technology. It helped us figure out not just the technical aspect, but also learn very quickly what customers really needed and wanted, and how to fine-tune and improve that very rapidly. And then more recently, we got the CEC RAMP grant, which has helped us to scale manufacturing. But of course, it's a matching grant. We need to we need to sort of figure out how to match it, and other sources of capital. But one big thing is you're coming in. 3 out of 4 of us on the founding team are engineers. There's really a language mismatch in understanding how to speak that language of finance. And it's, programs like this, we're part of LACI, a really great partner to have, reaching out to folks who are extremely helpful, helping you not just figure out where you need to be here, but how to build your company and tell the story of your scaling to stakeholders so that they can take a bet on you. I think that's one key challenge, particularly given, again, the macros.
I hope you don't mind that I'm like reading off notes, but I want to make sure that I'm actually adding value, because I know there are entrepreneurs in the audience, and so all I have is my own experience, though it sounds like we all have very similar ones and we're going to repeat each other a lot. But I think, agreeing very much with what you said, the scale gap really includes like addressing technical and managerial debt that, customer velocity exposes. You have this prototype, it's great, you're stoked about it, everybody's very interested. In our case, we did 2 within a year. We went from 0 employees to 15 employees to 2 pilots to 24 locations with hundreds of HVAC units, and we're like, yeah, and then we have a waiting list of 133 sites, and I'm like psyched, and I'm like, how many are we gonna do this year? Are we gonna do 60? And my new head of engineering sort of sat me down and was like, so, we need to talk. Like, we're gonna do 0 this year, and here's why. And I'm like, and it took a really long time for people saying to me, well, that's a good problem to have. And I'm like sitting there looking at them like, have you ever had this problem? Like, what are you talking about? Where you have customers, you have paying customers, you have demand, you have this backlog, and you have the complexities of taking something out of R&D, which was great working. We have amazing R&D partners. But then you do it twice, and like at a lab, they're just like, sweet. Twice, that was great. And I'm like, yeah, so not cost effective to have 4 PhDs working on 2 instances of this, like if we're gonna do 24 and 68. So scaling deeply technical innovations, and I know people get really excited about ours because they're like, oh, it's software, I'm sure VCs love it, but it's not rabbitshoes.com. It's not like rabbits are the 3rd most popular pet, they have big feet, they need shoes, they're up an e-commerce site, and you can just throw a hot fix out there. You're actually impacting human beings, you're implementing, systems in the real world that deal with things like weather, et cetera. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for us, is just, technical and managerial debt is not sexy to a VC or the private market. I have been telling folks a little bit that it's sort of like if you meet someone that you really love and everybody's really excited and you're in this honeymoon stage and you're like, okay, we're gonna have kids, and we're gonna have a house, and we're gonna live in this great place, and all you need to do is help me pay down my ridiculous amounts of student debt. And they're like, well, a couple of years ago when money was free, people would have grudgingly helped you pay that down, but now I think there's just less interest from, investors don't like to pay for debt, and they wanna see fast returns, and if you don't feel you can reach that 5-year payback in 5 years because your technical and managerial debt are slowing you down, I think it's really important to have subsidized programs like this that understand that hardware is hard, integrated systems are hard, things that work with real customers and real systems and have a lot of technical complexity to deliver a frictionless customer experience is hard. And the amount of market pressure that we have in climate tech, because it's just getting so hot and this stuff is getting so needed every year, and it's like, come on, do it now. The grid is in trouble, and you're just like, holy crap. So I think that level of pressure is something that could be really helped by, I think, both of the things that you mentioned, like public funds and a sort of pipeline that assists at every stage of development, as well as I think just sort of eliminating more of the regulatory complexity and the complexity of the incentives, the incentives and programs out there. So I know California is amazing in some ways, but we've got, CARB, we've got the CPUC, we've got CAISO, we've got CEC, and then we have all these big, players who know how to navigate that. And when you're a small fry sort of stepping into that ocean, it can be quite the jump. So I think, assistance along every step of the way with not only financial and technical support, but also relationship building with more established companies would be great.
I was going to go down a certain path, but you just said something that I want to speak to. So, when we made that acquisition that I mentioned in January, that was a startup company that was having trouble scaling. And, money was getting tight. And, what they were forced to do was pivot from their initial strategy and try to be something to everybody to bring the revenue in and try to fund that, which turned into just an impossible scaling nightmare and compromised the company. And this was a recent SPAC that ended up going through a receivership is when we purchased them. So I saw the other side of that, and as you look back and you talk to the employees, you realize that there wasn't the initial mission they set out to try to achieve, that they were well funded at one point, had to pivot to survive. And it was compromised, the risk levels go up, and the chance of success goes down.
Yes.
So we saw that firsthand with that. What I was going to speak to though was, the funding is incredibly important, and we talked about scaling, but the other side of it is that the technology continues to advance.
Right.
And so if we're going to be successful for the long term, we have to be on the front end of that, and we have to be careful that how far on the front end are you, because we don't want to compromise the successes we've already had, but we want to continue to push technology. So for Gillig, it is the fuel cell product, body electronics, changing the whole electrical architecture, telematics. There's going to be an AV future for our business. It's further down the road, but you need to start planting those seeds today. So there is a long list of very expensive, very time-consuming, and pretty risky type of technologies that we're going to push forward to be successful and to help push transit forward in this country. So that's important, but the other part I wanted to bring up, and I think the onus is on companies like Gillig, in our situation, the onus is on me, is to educate the state better than I had in the past. And what I mean by that is we were silent, we didn't ask for much, and then we get caught in this transition in technology. Our competition is foreign. Our competition is coming in from Canada, our competition is coming in from China, and they are very well funded, and there are a lot of subsidies that they get provided to at their federal levels. And for us, we don't see as much of that. So this is when we reached out to the state. We are an established business that has a lot of employees, but it's not politically as sexy as building a brand new plant and hiring new employees. We'll hire new employees with these programs, but it's about preserving the good jobs that are in California. And I'm a strong believer in taking care of your employees. So well-paid employees are gonna reinvest. They're gonna put their roots down in the state, and they're gonna reinvest in their families. So it's recycling those tax dollars back into the communities here. So what I need to do a better job of is educating the state about who Gillig is, what we stand for, and how we're recycling those tax dollars back here into the States versus taking those tax dollars and taking them back to different countries.
Nice.
Appreciate all those points and the need for governmental support around some of that investment. Was curious, just kind of on the workforce development side of things, are you, for all three of you, just kind of curious, to what extent are you able to tap into the expertise that you need? Are you finding that the workforce is out there, or just curious about workforce development needs that maybe the state could support?
Yeah, we're incredibly fortunate right now, and when we hire our employees, I mentioned that they're represented by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We have a wait list to work at Gillig, so we're fortunate, and it's a lot of friends and family. We don't go out and advertise very much for our employees. Now, I can't say that for a lot of other manufacturing businesses, but we're very fortunate. But we provide a very fair wage and great benefits, and our turnover rate is less than 2.5% in the manufacturing once you pull out the retirement. So that isn't an issue, but the issue is upskilling, right? Is upskilling with the new technology. So one of the things that we're in the middle of, and we received a HRTP grant to kick off a research project for this, a business plan I'll call it, is that we have a vision of not only upskilling our employees, but upskilling the industry's employees around in California and around the rest of this country in the transition to zero-emission product. Because there's a lot of training that needs to happen, and we can upskill the mechanics that are used to wrenching on the diesel engines and upskill them in the new technologies. There is a need for that, and I think a collaboration with a few companies and then with the state can go a long way.
Did either one of you
Speak
address
to that a little bit. Just like he said, it's I think being in California is probably one of the luckiest things for us. Very great ecosystem. One of our first engineers, a Cal student, he was still in his final semester when he started off with us. One thing I would say is the upskilling part. There's folks, in the Bay Area, we have, of course, a lot of computer scientists, et cetera, particularly if you're building software. That's very useful. And also very deep historic manufacturing experience. But at the same time, we're operating in a pretty nascent and co-ed market. And there's a lot of market building and development and sort of engagement that comes with that. And so how do you help folks sort of reframe the perspective, particularly on the team? And as a young startup for us, much younger, it's of course, we're starting off a bunch of young adults and start off in our 20s. We need a pipeline of both, of course, fresh folks with fresh ideas, perspectives, but also folks with deep experience, because the reality is we're in the infrastructure business, the utility business. It's pretty established. You got to figure out how to work within that space. And so then how do you strike that balance? How do you make sure you don't have a gap where you're not transferring enough knowledge or training to folks who are younger in their careers and joining your team? A huge part of that is also partnership with a lot of sort of community organizations, unions. One of our pilots was at the IBEW local union office, through which they're helping, and we're working together to develop sort of this training program for maintenance. And so things like that are extremely helpful. One thing I would say, and I think this was a question about what that gap is of course there's sometimes you're competing on the market for talent just as much as you're competing for everything else. And so earlier on, particularly if you have funding challenges, and we talked about the tech and managerial gap, right? Particularly on the managerial side, how do you fill that particularly? And it's important to sell people on the mission and on what you're building. And if you're compromising that mission in pursuit of course, staying alive is important, then you could start to see experiences of burning people out or loss of motivation. So it's really a fine balance to strike. And it's important to reach deep into the ecosystem because folks in this room have a ton of experience, decades working within that space.
I'm having PTSD listening to you. I feel like in our own particular workforce, it's been a source of, I felt a little bit like Noah building the ark. Like everyone's just like, what are you doing? Like the whole place is on fire. We've got huge demand. Why are you just tootling away on a recruitment, hiring, and retention process for the company? You're nuts. Just hire the smartest person. And we did do that in the beginning. I think like a lot of startups, you can't offer very much in terms of pay. You basically will just try to hire the person with the most general intelligence who will work for you. Like you're like, oh, cool, you'll do this? All right. And it becomes, I think it's great because you have all these wicked smart people, But it's like managing a stable of stallions. Like they do not want to pull. You get to a point where you all need to be pulling in the same direction, and they're just like, oh hell no, I want to do what I want to do. And it just becomes unmanageable. It's an ungovernable group of people, which I think you can have in certain teams, like design teams. That's why you have your clipboard person. It shields them from the real world, deadlines, budgets, things like that. But that managerial layer, that took us time. And then you're also dealing technically with a lot of weird technology. So similar, think about buildings. Buildings are like cars. They used to be mostly mechanical systems, and now they're highly computerized. We have gutted vocational education. I mean, we have not had a hard time finding PhDs, well-educated developers. Right now is a very good time to be hiring for software engineers. Try to find an electrician, especially in the Bay Area. It makes me sick here. Every time we get a quote, it's 4 times more expensive than anywhere else because there's such a lack of people who have the trades experience. And we pay prevailing wage. We work with unions, and that means that you combine paying someone a wage that it takes to pay for rent and a very expensive place to live, plus the fact that they're in such demand, and it becomes really difficult. So we are in the very fortunate position, and I could wax on and on throughout my entire career about how delightful and what a great surprise it was that our first beachhead is K-12, because I started the Solar for Our Schools program, which worked with solar PV and grid-tied inverters back in the early 2000s. That program was one of our first supporters. They became our first funder. We work with K-12 schools, so we cultivate a very strong relationship with our target customers, first and foremost. We try to really understand their struggles and add value. And then there are vocational struggles, like getting facilities managers to hire buildings where your average portfolio age of buildings might be 81 years old and 23-year-old HVAC systems, and you have 3 people for 1,000 systems to maintain all of those with a declining budget. How do you do it? And so using AI as a way to supplement their workforce so that they can get more done with fewer human resources. But the problem is that the technology we use, like your vehicles in all likelihood, is a completely foreign piece of technology to these workers. So really starting to integrate into the K-12 STEM curriculum with their teachers at the middle school, high school, and elementary school level. So we worked with Solar for Our Schools to work with K-12 educators, and then we work with high school vocational education, career technical education, and adult workers who are transitioning, architects, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, HVAC-R certified people through Southern California Edison's Energy Education Center, through credentialing organizations with the AIA, et cetera, and try to create that training on these new concepts so that we can build that workforce ahead of what we need.
I think that's just a topic that would take another few hours to talk about, but man, does this country need it.
Yeah.
We want to bring the middle class back into this country.
Yeah.
It starts with the parents of kindergartners.
Yeah.
And we have to convince this next generation that going into vocational can provide a great life, and at the federal government level, we need to support that.
Yes.
And we do not do a good job of that in our country. We've lost that.
Really interesting discussion here. Theresa, did you want to add anything on this topic? Obviously, in kind of the workforce development sphere with the UCs, just wanted to give you an opportunity if you'd like.
I am just intrigued with this conversation. With the Hydrogen Hub, we worked very closely with labor, and we knew how critical that workforce is in advancing that clean energy transition. So I'm happy to talk to you further offline about what's possible to support, what lessons learned that we went through the past couple of years in developing the ARCHES Hydrogen Hub that could benefit this group here and others in the audience probably. I'm very intrigued with your comments. So, but the university system is very, yes, we focus on our degrees and such, but we have that intersegmental partnerships with Cal State and community colleges and now vocational. And so our relationships are getting stronger and they're very critical. So thank you for your comments.
All right, I think we're getting towards the end of our session. Wanted to just kind of tap into your collective wisdom and experience, having led your respective companies, and obviously a lot of entrepreneurs out there in the audience that could benefit from the kind of collective learning that you've all benefited from. So yeah, just wanted to ask if you could kind of share one piece of advice or recommendation that you think might be applicable to others in the audience.
For me, I think it would probably be just know your, the phrase would be know your customer, but I think to be successful, you gotta go beyond just knowing your customer, but you have to know every stakeholder along the value chain. It's important to, I think, not just focus on the technological solution is extremely important, but then the user interface, the human-machine interface, how the folks who are going to be maintaining it, folks who are going to be using it on a daily basis, which is usually not your actual customer. How do they interact with it? How simple is it through the process of deployment? How easy is it for your customer to go through that? And particularly, what is their underlying incentive? What is their underlying business model? What do they care about deeply? And how can you make your solution, not just the technology, it's a solution, be a solution for their real problem? And most importantly also, it's how do you evolve that through their life cycle of their business journey? And I think wrapping all of those things together might be challenging, particularly, again, it's an inchoate market. There's a lot of evolution. Staying on top of that, I think, is probably the most critical, especially at the early stages.
I think that's the most important thing. Everything you just said, I would say plus 1, 2, 3. And then just for you as an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur out there, I'm gonna just say the quiet part loud. And again, I can only speak for myself, but also I can maybe observe what I see other entrepreneurs. Nobody knows what they're doing. None of us. We all feel like we're losers. We all feel like we're failing. We all feel stressed at times. And then we all feel triumphant at times, sometimes within the same hour. So it's not just you. This current moment with the situation with interest and capital in the market, lots of people are struggling. I think the important thing though is to humble yourself, know your customers first, and also before I even had a website for my company, before I even knew what my business model was, I found 56 advisors that I put on an email blast. I went to them each personally. I was like, can I just lean on you? And it's sort of amazing. They don't have equity or anything. They just want to help. And I would be like, I have the most random problem. I would put it up to the list, and there's always someone on that list that can solve it. They always have the answer. And then now that I'm in a position where I try to do that too. If people say no to you, though, be gracious. We're all under a lot of pressure. But look around this room and find the other entrepreneurs who will answer your call and support you. You're going to need a lot of support. It's hard. It takes a long time. There are a lot of things to know. You can't know it all. Really lean on your advisors, your friends, and your network to support you. And make sure that it's big and diversified, because you can't ask too much, obviously, if people are in the same boat as you.
That's great advice. Mine's pretty simple. Take care of the people that take care of you. Think about those employees that you have and invest in them. And you can invest financially, but as founders, co-founders, CEOs, presidents, managers, invest your time. Get to know your team. Make sure that they understand the passion that you have for the business. Help them create that same passion, because you're not successful without the team. So just invest in your team.
May I add one last quick thing? Because this is a room full of entrepreneurs. A lot of us are here. It's important to realize as you're trying to build sustainability, in our global economy, realize you also are the energy resource. So you want to not just do this well, but do this well sustainably for a good long time. So take care of yourself.
Great messages. Theresa, did you want to add anything for this one?
I don't.
Okay, no worries. Great messages, leveraging your network and really tapping into the collective expertise and taking care of the people around you and yourself for the long haul. Important messages. So, just wanted to mention at the end here too, it's not a solve all, but we do have some upcoming funding opportunities I just wanted to mention at conclusion of this panel, just for you all to be aware that we're continuing to invest, in CalSeed, Cal Testbed, but there's a wide range of other funding opportunities available through the Energy Commission. One in particular that may be of particular interest is the Bridge program. So that provides kind of follow-on public funding, $1 to $4 million per award. If you've had if you received a grant previously from California or from the federal government, but need help kind of making it to the next stage, and a wide range of other opportunities in EVs as DERs, pilot battery manufacturing, helping component developers kind of access more centralized resources for manufacturing, incorporating their components into cells, and a wide range of other opportunities. So glad to speak to all of you. And Lindsay Franson, I see here, is also from the CEC and others. We can help guide you to funding opportunities that may be of interest. So really appreciate all four of you contributing to this early session, and thanks for everyone's attention. Let's just thank our panel here.